Welcome to Coffee with the Dean. Today, second-year student Elizabeth Monroe joins me for coffee. Elizabeth grew up in Houston, Texas, and graduated from Columbia University with a bachelor's in art history and a minor in African American studies. Elizabeth, great to have you as a guest on our show, and thanks for joining me for a cup of coffee.
Yes, thank you. So happy to be here.
Well, it's great to see you. Hey, look, I want to get at the start. I understand that before you came to law school, well, long ago, you were a middle school teacher in Texas.
Yes.
How did that experience shape your decision to go to law school and advocate for people in your community?
Yeah, so I taught middle school reading and writing. I taught 6th and 7th grade, and I really loved it. I taught for 4 years, and I subbed for 1 year before that. And the entire time I was at schools that were underserved, Title I schools is what we call them in Texas. And it was a really great experience being able to teach Black and brown students and low-income students. But I realized kind of through the pandemic, I did 1 full year of subbing and 1 full year of teaching pre-pandemic. And then my second year was like 2020 that year. And so I kind of just realized that the classroom didn't feel wide enough. I didn't feel like I could advocate for my students in the way that I wanted to. And I felt a little limited by the classroom, if that makes sense. And I was trying to figure out how I could I guess just better serve them. I thought that they were so full of joy and just fun and curious, and I really wanted to be a part of like a world that deserved that from them. And the law just seemed to like make sense, I guess. It seemed like a lot of the things that I wanted to change, just I needed to get outside of education and kind of like go at it from a structural or like a systemic point of view. And law school just seemed to work. I just knew that I wanted to, one, show my kids like what was possible, right? And that even if like you come out of school and you have like this one idea of what you want to do, like it's okay to change your mind in the middle of that. But 2, I just also wanted to be a better community member to them. And I thought that legal advocacy seemed like a good way to do that.
Yeah. What a challenging time to teach during pandemic there. And it's got to be inspiring when you look back at what the children achieved, even in the tough time they were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're currently a member of the Student Bar Association.
Yes.
And you chair or direct the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee there of the SBA. And what brought you to that?
And I think no matter where I am in life or professionally, academically, I always find myself in roles that are community-based, equity and like access-based. And so in undergrad, I was on like the Multicultural Affairs Advisory Board. When I was teaching, I was in like different like PTA groups, or I was like figuring out how to like make curriculum more inclusive for students in the classroom and things like that. And I think coming into law school, I knew that that wasn't gonna change. Like that's just my personality and it's the work that sustains me. And so last year as a 1L, I joined the EDI committee, or the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, which is made up of both faculty, students, and alum. And so that was a really good opportunity to figure out, okay, like UCI is this place that I came to because I really liked that I felt like it put action behind like the words of wanting to be like a place that was inclusive and this concept of like inclusive excellence. And I wanted to be a part of pushing that and making it a reality. And so this year coming into 2L, it just seemed like a natural progression to kind of like do that, take it a step further and be the chair of EDI for SBA.
Well, it sounds like you're doing work not only in the law school, but also sort of externally. And you've worked with Southern California ACLU. And
Yes.
then you've also a member of you've been part of the Transgender Legal Assistance Clinic. Can you talk about those experiences and what they mean to you? And
when I think about being in like challenging places or doing challenging things, like I don't know how to do those things, I guess like the more professional or standard things, without also like being a community member and helping like improve my community, and in a way that not just is like accepting of like different people's identities, but in a way that celebrates different people's identities. And so 1L, when I came in, I knew I wanted to do some kind of pro bono project that was in like the I guess like civil liberties or like human rights like space. And the opportunity to work with TLAC, or the Transgender Legal Assistance Clinic, seemed like the perfect opportunity to do that. And so through that opportunity, basically we hold clinics once a month, and we help people who want to fill out the form to do like a name and gender change, like legally. And so that's been really exciting work. I've been able to continue it into 3L. And so I ended up staying on through as pro bono work through this past semester, so fall 2L. And I'm going back in the spring as an extern for credit. So I also just can't seem to leave the work.
What a great experience, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
They have so many talented lawyers there.
Yes.
Did you feel like you got some good mentoring and got to see some great lawyering in action?
Absolutely. So the summer, I think I did a lot in the policy space. I was able to kind of revamp the ACLU, at least ACLU SoCal's Know Your Rights material as it relates to student rights for LGBTQ and trans students. And then I was able to work on like an implementation toolkit for rapid response for like students, community members, parents who want to advocate like for their students or advocate for their communities in moments when it's feeling like very pressing. So I did a lot of policy work in the summer. And then I think as things have shifted in the climate in California, we're now starting to get into more like of a litigation space. And it's been really interesting to see like, I guess like the range of what it is that lawyers do, especially in the impact litigation world. I just didn't think that it was that vast. But I think being able to work underneath my direct supervisor and the rest of the team at the ACLU has definitely provided me with like a ton of mentorship opportunities. And just being able to see like people who are really good at their job has been like really nice.
Sounds like you've had an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Maybe I could take you back to the 1L year and you could tell me a little bit about how was that for you, and what advice would you have for incoming first-year students as they're thinking about law school or as they're getting prepared to start law school?
Yeah, so I had a pretty unique 1L experience. On the first day of orientation, my mom was diagnosed with a really aggressive form of breast cancer. It shifted completely like what I thought my law school experience was going to be. But I think like when I think back on what are the things I was looking for in a school and what are the ways in which I feel like UCI really supported me through that, I'm immensely grateful that I was here. Everyone was just like really good to me, I'll say. And I think it was definitely a tough year. I'm happy to share that like my mom is cancer-free now. That happened kind of over the summer. And so we're really happy about that. 2L's been completely different, not having to deal with that in the background. But yeah, 1L was tough. It was a lot.
Well, I'm so happy for your family, but also what a testament to your resilience, right? 1L is first year of law school is tough enough without having family challenges, and although you receive support, what a great story of how well you've achieved things and continue to be successful. And as you described earlier, what a fabulous summer experience after that. Well, one of the things I was really intrigued about when I was reading your resume and a little bit of background is it sounded like you had an amazing undergraduate experience. And when I was looking at your background, I noticed I saw you were an undergraduate major in art history. Can you talk a little bit about that degree and how did that inform your interests in law school?
Yeah, when I was in undergrad, I was constantly figuring out how, or I guess what my place was in art history, and being a Black woman, the descendant of like enslaved peoples in the United States, I really found myself interested in Black art and how Black art has kind of like transitioned and progressed through time. So in the summer after my sophomore year, I interned at the Studio Museum in Harlem, which has one of the largest, if not the largest, permanent collection of Black art in the world. And I really found myself pulled to these pieces that were created by Black artists in a time when Black people just did not have rights, property rights, intellectual property rights. We weren't citizens, things like that. And I was really curious, like what creating in that time looked like for them and how that informed, one, the things they were creating and the artists that came after them. And so that kind of sparked my intellectual property interest. I think even today, like we see that Black artists have issues with like protecting their intellectual property. I think we've seen that with like musicians constantly over time. We've seen it with dancers and things like that. And so that summer at the Studio Museum is kind of like one of the first times when I can pinpoint like when my interest in the law kind of began. Totally different from like being a teacher and all of that. But I think like that was really the first moment where I was like, oh, legally there has to be a solve here.
I'd love to ask you, what's your favorite part of UCI Law? As I said earlier, you've spent time in Texas. We were talking earlier before the interview how you've just gotten back from interviewing students in Boston or meeting with students in Boston.
Yeah.
You spent time in New York. Now you're out in California. And so what's your favorite part about the school and your time spent here?
I feel like UCI has name recognition and reach. Like we have programs on the East Coast. We have alum everywhere. We're doing things in different places. And I really like that. I'm someone who likes to feel connected in a lot of places and someone who likes to move clearly also. One of the main things that attracted me to the school was how young the school is. I think all the time about how lucky I am with the professors that I have and that I'm able to be in classrooms where I feel seen and represented and heard, and that I'm able to have professors that look like me, and that I'm able to like talk in class and feel heard and feel like my voice matters, and that I'm not the only one who's bringing up like certain issues. That's also super important. And so I really, really love the professors here, and I think that's probably my favorite thing about UCI.
And I'm fortunate I have some fabulous colleagues. And so, well, Elizabeth, thanks for joining me for a cup of coffee, and
Yes.
Great to have you.
Yes.
Hope you'll join us for the next episode of Coffee with the Dean.